When the state takes over parenthood, power, due process, and a child's right to their family, there's a feeling that is difficult to explain to anyone who has never lived through it. To exist in a society that prides itself on human rights, safety, and justice, and yet feel completely powerless when power is turned against you. I want to speak about a Sweden many people do not see. A Sweden where individuals could be treated as if they're replaceable, as if the bond between parent and child could be negotiated away, scheduled, and reduced to contact on someone else's terms. I want to speak about abuse of power and about why we must begin to treat this as a shared societal problem, not as 1,000 isolated individual cases. Authorities as God, without the justice. Sometimes it feels as if authorities act as though they were God. But if God symbolizes justice, mercy, and truth, then this is something else. Because it is one thing for a state to have power. It must. The question is how that power is used. When power is exercised without humility, without genuine listening, without transparency, and without balance between the parties, then it stops being protection. It becomes a threat, not only to those who are directly affected, but to democracy itself. And this does not apply to just one authority. Power can be abused in healthcare by employers and in systems that control welfare, housing, and basic rights. But the area that shakes people to the core is when power is used against a family. A child's right to their family is not a slogan. Sweden has committed to the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. This is not just a nice document. It is meant to be a moral and legal compass. Article 9 states that a child should not be separated from their parents against their will except when competent authorities, under legal review, determine that it is necessary in the best interest of the child. It also says that both the child and the parents must have the opportunity to be heard, and that the child has a right to maintain regular contact with both parents. This is a foundation. Separation is an exception, not the normal condition. And when an exception becomes a system, we must dare to ask, have we lost our way? What the law says and what people experience. The Swedish National Board of Health and Welfare describes the criteria for compulsory care under LVU. The problems must be connected to home environment or to the child's own behavior. There must be a clear and present risk to the child's health or development, and the necessary support cannot be provided voluntarily. Those are strong words. Clear risk, not a vague feeling, not uncertainty, not what if. And yet many parents describe being assessed through a lens where their words carry little weight. Their intentions are misinterpreted. Their mistakes are magnified. Their love is treated with suspicion. Their fight for their child is labeled as a problem. When you enter a system where you must repeatedly ask for permission to be with your own child, a humiliation is created that is hard to put into words. It isn't only the outcome that hurts. It is a role you are forced into. From parent to annoyance, if you call too often, from mother or father to someone who is expected to be grateful for the few minutes granted. The greatest pain, a living child you cannot reach. When someone dies, there is a terrible finality. When someone takes your child and the child is alive, but living somewhere you do not control, then you live in a different kind of grief. Grief without an end point. Many parents describe it as trauma. Not sadness, but deep, ongoing trauma where the body and mind are in constant war. Where's my child? How is she? Who comforts her? What happens when she cries? This pain is what makes people lose their footing. And sometimes the system responds, see, she is unstable. But who remains stable when you are separated from your child and then told to move on? When care is not safe, what oversight reports show? It must be said clearly, there are children who need protection. There are homes where conditions are dangerous. But it must also be said with equal clarity, state care is not automatically safe. The Swedish Health and Social Care Inspectorate, IVO, has repeatedly reported serious deficiencies in residential care, HVB, and supported housing, threats, violence, abuse, and inadequate routines to prevent and manage violations and self-harm. When the Oversight Authority repeatedly identifies serious problems, one crucial question arises. What is the moral legitimacy of separating a child from their parents if the alternative placement cannot be guaranteed as safe? Society must be mature enough to hold two truths at once. Some children need protection from their home environment. Some children are also harmed by inadequate state care. That means a solution cannot be automatic. Remove and hope. The system failure, from support to control, and from reunification to permanence. A recurring testimony from many affected parents is that they do not experience the system asking the question, how can we help you make it work at home? Instead, they experience a process that feels like an investigation designed to find faults, not support designed to strengthen parenting. At the same time, major government inquiries have highlighted serious issues in state care and the need for stronger quality and oversight, including SU 2023:66, which discusses how quality and supervision must be improved. This matters. If the state takes over responsibility, the state must also accept scrutiny and accept criticism. Why people lose faith in justice? When people say no one listens, it is not always because they refuse accountability. Often it is because they experience a system where professionals are treated as automatically more credible. Parents' accounts are dismissed as excuses or denial. Procedural errors rarely have consequences. Power structures protect each other. When these patterns repeat, a dangerous public feeling grows that the law is not the same for everyone. And this is how a democracy begins to crack, not through dramatic explosions, but through ordinary people losing faith that the doors of the rule of law are truly open to them. What we must do: solutions, reforms, accountability. If this text is to be more than an emotional outcry, it needs clear, achievable demands. Here are reforms that are both reasonable and democratic. 1. Real due process in LVU cases. Stronger requirements for evidence and transparency in assessments. Clearer reporting of alternatives to coercion, what support was tried, and why it was not enough. Shorter timelines and better opportunities for parents to respond to claims with meaningful support. 2. Reunification as a real objective. When separation happens, there must be a concrete reunification plan, measurable milestones, active support so the child can return home when risks decrease. 3. Safety and quality in state care, zero tolerance for failures. When IVO identifies violence, threats, and inadequate routines, the response cannot be "we are working on it." It must lead to clearer quality requirements, more frequent follow-ups, immediate consequences when children's safety is compromised, for the child's voice without making the child responsible. Children must be heard under the convention, but they must not carry responsibility for adult conflict. This requires professional, independent child interviews and protection against undue influence from all sides. 5. A shared public debate. Our problem, not my case. When people are isolated, they're easy to dismiss. When people unite and demand reforms, peacefully, legally, and persistently, power must listen. That can include civic proposals at the municipal level, consultation responses, and opinion work, contact with journalists and investigative media, organized peaceful demonstrations, demands to political parties before elections. What will you do about due process, support, and reunification? Closing. Power must withstand light. What I describe is not hatred toward individuals working inside the system. It is criticism of a system that is experienced as closed, harsh, and sometimes inhuman. Power must withstand light. Power must withstand scrutiny. Power must withstand questions, especially when it involves children. Because in a society that claims to be just, it is not enough to say the best interest of the child, as if it were a password. The best interest of the child must be transparent, evidence-based, proportional, and humane. And the best interest of the child can never be reduced to making a child effectively parentless when reunification is possible.